The U.S. military saying one of its coalition airstrikes aimed at ISIS may have unintentionally struck Syrian forces. It happened in the eastern part of the country on the fifth day of a fragile ceasefire. The Associated Press is reporting that Russia claims at least 62 Syrian soldiers are dead. The U.S.-led coalition is now calling off its air campaign against the Islamic State terrorists in that area. Aaron David Miller is a former advisor to 6 secretaries of state and VP of the Woodrow Wilson Center. He joins us now to weigh in on this issue. Aaron, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.
You know, from the onset, there was doubt that this fragile cessation of violence in Syria could be achieved. And now, less than a week old, it appears the ceasefire is in jeopardy. Why?
Too many moving parts, too many different agendas, external powers, specifically the U.S. and Russia, that may have a tactical coincidence of interest, but whose strategic goals with respect to Syria are fundamentally different. And the reality is that the actors on the ground are going to control the ceasefire. It's arguable, frankly, whether Assad can control his own militias. You've seen the difficulties in separating out the so-called moderate Syrian, carefully vetted opposition elements from those of Nusra and the Islamic State. And just in general, after 5 years of bloody civil war, hemorrhaging terrorists and refugees, you have a fundamentally unsettled situation on the ground. And you saw it today, if the reports are true, that the United States unintentionally struck Syrian military positions near Deir el-Zor alongside an effort to strike the Islamic State. All this is going to do is make the situation on the ground much more complicated. It's going to confirm conspiracy theories that we really are supporting the Islamic State and backing the Iranians against the Shia.
Aaron, I mean, you really put out a mouthful there, because when you look at that, all of the forces on the ground there are in such close proximity to each other. So that was always one of the concerns when Russia involved itself into this Syrian conflict. And now you have Russia and the United States both pointing the finger at each other for various violations of this agreement, and more importantly, valuable humanitarian aid that was designed to get to those Syrian people caught in the crossfire of this civil war. Well, it has not been met. It's not been delivered due to rebel factions in Aleppo, and so now Russia accuses the U.S. of not being able to control opposition rebels. How can the U.S. resolve this conflict or this issue in order to keep this fragile ceasefire secure?
I mean, I'm not sure they can, and I think we have to stop thinking about comprehensive solutions and get used to the reality that you're going to be dealing with very uncertain outcomes. Look, for the next 3 or 4 months, Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin actually have a coincident sort of overlapping goal, which may, in fact, suggest that this thing can be put back together. Obama wants to leave office with the situation in Syria a little more stable and preempts criticism that he has been too passive in the face of a 5-year struggle. Putin wants to use the U.S. in order to secure and legitimize Russian interests there. Both of these actors fundamentally believe that there is no overarching comprehensive deal in Syria. And I suspect it's going to be left to the next he or she, R or D, to deal with Syria as well as the other headaches.
All right, well said, Aaron, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, Aaron, but I want to get to another question real quick, because we're going to lose you in a matter of time. A more intense focus will be on Syria when the United Nations 71st General Assembly convenes next week. Will the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the heads of state like President Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin be able to, and obviously you're saying that it's probably not likely, but will they be able to secure some sort of diplomatic and peaceful end to meet the humanitarian need that exists because of the Syrian conflict?
Highly unlikely in the next week or so. Really highly unlikely. 3 powers control the situation on the ground in Syria right now: Russia, Iran, and Turkey.
Wow.
And that reality, because of demography and geography, will probably remain the case and dictate the situation over the course of the next year.
And what does that mean for the millions of people who have been displaced, who have already fled? They're now in a refugee status. You even have the Pope coming out saying the world needs to open up its arms to refugees. But you know, with that goes the concern about each country's national security because of trying to vet those refugees who are fleeing what's unfolding in Syria.
moral, humanitarian, and strategic tragedy and disaster for the United States. Largest single refugee flow since the end of the Second World War. But let's be clear about something. The U.S. record on humanitarian interventions, from the Holocaust to Rwanda to Darfur to Congo, with the exception of Bosnia, is pretty poor. This is not just a Barack Obama problem. This is a problem that the United States has confronted for the last 50 to 60 years, trying to figure out how to deal with these humanitarian catastrophes when their interests were involved, our interests were involved, and even when they're not. And frankly, given our track record among Republicans and Democrats, we still haven't found the right prescription to deal with internal events like Syria.
Aaron David Miller, thank you for your insights and your perspective, sir. Good day to you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.